Hey robot makers, how you doing? Hope you're having a good day so far. So do you want to know how to build web pages using GitHub, Markdown, Yaml, Bootstrap and Jekyll? Then this is the show for you. We're going to be using these tools to build the periodic table of robotics, and you can help me do that too. So let's dive straight in. My name's Kevin. Come with me as we build robots, bring them to life with code, and have a whole load of fun along the way. Okay, let's get over to our keynote and see what this is all about. Get a sneaky peek there from the thumbnail about what this is about. So yeah, today we're going to be looking about how to build an information resource about robotics, and you can use this for all kinds of different things. If you're creating some code and you want to build some great documentation, you can use this feature too. So today we're going to be looking at Git, submodules, we're going to be looking at Markdown, Jekyll, GitHub Pages, which are kind of the same thing and kind of not. We're going to be looking at Bootstrap and Yaml. Now we're only going to touch lightly on each of these because each one of these things is a rabbit hole in its own right. And at the end I'm going to show you how you can collaborate with me to build this new resource. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm shooting for. I want to have an index page, and on there, a bit like a periodic table, there's going to be loads of different elements of robotics. So you're going to have the 2-letter code, you're going to have some kind of name, and then when you click into that, it will expand and there'll be a full details page about that. So for example, the Arduino will be AR, be our first element. It's one of the first things people get to use in robotics. Not everybody, but quite a few people come to robotics through the Arduino because it's practical computing. And there'll be some details about that as well. There'll be an author, so you'll get to have your name on the page as well as the date when you wrote this. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, and we're going to see how we can build up this resource. So the first thing is, behind the scenes, there's going to be some framework. Web pages are made up of quite a few different things. So HTML is the language of web pages, CSS, cascading style sheets, is the style that's applied to it, and there is a CSS style framework called Bootstrap, and it makes it really, really easy to add style to pages with very little clutter. So we're going to be using Bootstrap to build up our page and make it look something like this. So this is called a Bootstrap card, a little square thing there, and we can put elements inside that card. We can choose the color and things like that. We're going to have a navigation bar at the top to make it easy to navigate our site. Within the details page, there's going to be the title, there is going to be the author, and there's going to be the date, and there's going to be some page content as well. Now all those different things we're going to actually store using Yaml, and Yaml is a data framework, a data storage markup language, and we'll get into some of that in a minute. And the pages themselves, we're going to define using Markdown. Now, Markdown is one of my favourite things. It's something I've only recently discovered, maybe about 2 years ago, and I absolutely love this. So, whereas HTML, you might have heard of that for web pages, that's a markup language, that's a hypertext markup language. Markdown is kind of the opposite. So, whereas Markdown is a play on markup languages like XML or HTML, and Markdown, whereas markup languages add extra data, they add extra tags and things, so you might see like the little brackets and HTML and then slash brackets at the end, brackets slash and then brackets at the end to close the tags. They're all extra metadata to tell the browser how to display that page. So you have to add lots of extra tags to format a page, and that can make your actual content get lost amongst all them tags. So one of the reasons I absolutely love Markdown is because you don't have to do that. Markdown is the opposite. So rather than adding extra metadata, what happens is with Markdown, it requires no extra metadata. It uses conventions to define style and structure. And we can then use things like Bootstrap to help make those styles really come to life and pop. So the official definition of what Markdown is it's a lightweight markup language for creating formatted text using a plain text editor, which is what we like to do when we code. So John Gruber and Aaron Swartz created Markdown in 2004, so it's not that old really, as a Markdown language, and that says appeal to human readers in its source code form. So it's very easy to write, very easy to read, doesn't take a big learning curve to get familiar with. So on the two sides of the screen there, on the left hand side we have the hash symbol with a space, and then Markdown is awesome. And you can see on the right hand side it says Markdown is awesome, and it's in the heading 1 style. So HTML has lots of different heading styles, and that's a heading 1. It's also got an underline for free, so we don't have to define that. That's simply by just putting that little hash in front of some text. Then we've got a little paragraph of text. You can see I've got these little backticks around the hash, and that makes it code. So there's a special style been applied to that, and that's why it looks red on there. Then the next section is 2 hashes, so that means heading style 2, and then that's where it says code. And again, I've got you can wrap code in 3 characters, that little backtick again, and it looks like this. Whereas I've got tick, 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 and then Python, we're telling the browser, the Markdown interpreter, that this next block of code until the other ticks there, this is going to be a piece of Python, and it knows how to interpret that. It colors it, it makes it the correct kind of font. I think that's Menlo. And then we've got 3 dashes altogether, and that means do another horizontal line. Then we've got the 2 hashes again with the word style, so that's a heading 2 style, another paragraph. And then we've got some other things. So if you put a star either side of a word, you'll get an italic. If you have 2 stars, you'll get bold. If you have 3 stars, you get italic bold. And if you have 2 squiggles, they're the it looks like an S on the side. If you get 2 of those either side, you get a strike through. And we can go on to look at things like lists as well, where you just put a dash and you'll get like a bulleted list. So Markdown is really, really good. Something that you can learn in 5 minutes. Yes, Richard says they're tildes. Exactly, they're tildes. Thank you for that. So we're going to be using Markdown to create our content for our pages. Now, Yaml is, it started out as being yet another markup language, and then when it became more popular, they kind of made it a bit more serious and repurposed it to Yaml ain't markup language, and it's kind of a recursive name, which I like. So Yaml is really great for creating data files that are clean and easy to maintain. So yeah, again, you can see there, it looks very similar to kind of Markdown. It's just nice, clean text. So we've got key value pairs there. The key on the left with the colon separates it from the value. And we can do things like create our own structure for files that we want to do something with. So I think I've got things like dates in there, we've got links, we've got some comments and so on. So we're going to use a tool called Jekyll, which is what GitHub uses to build pages. And Jekyll can take a bunch of Markdown files, can take some YAML files, it mixes it all up, and what you have at the end is a built website, static website. I've used this to build out smarsfan.com, and I'll be using that to build out this periodic table of robotics as well. So YAML is defined as a human-readable data serialization language. It's commonly used for configuration files and in applications where data is being stored or transmitted. It uses both Python-style indentation to indicate nesting, and is more compact. And a more compact format uses the it's the square brackets square brackets for lists, and the squiggly brackets for maps, so you can map values. Thus, JSON files are valid YAML 1.2, so it makes it kind of compatible either way. I really like that. I prefer it over JSON. JSON has lots of extra squiggly brackets. You have to have pairs of them open and close. You don't have to have any of that in YAML. It's just all comes down to how you indent the files for the structure. Okay. So next we're going to look at Markdown Pages. So a Markdown page is a combination of a bit of YAML and a bit of Markdown. And this is what Jekyll uses to build out web pages. So we've got the 3 dashes, and that indicates to Jekyll that this is going to be the start of a YAML block. And then we've got 3 dashes at the end to say that's the end of that YAML block. And collectively, they call this front matter. So front matter has got things like what is the template that we're going to use for our web page. So on this one, I've got a template that's called POTR, which is it should be POTR, Periodic Table of Robotics. Then we have a name for the page, so that's Arduino. I've created a tag that I'm calling code, which is AR, that's the value there. Title, that's going to be the title that appears on the top of the browser when you look at the page. We've got a description in there as well. We've got a link to the actual we might have more than one link, but we have an area where we can put links in there. We've got an area to put images, and again, it's like a link to an image, who the author is, and what the date this particular page was created on. And then we've got some regular plain Markdown text, so we can put all the hashes and things like that in it to bring that page to life when it gets rendered by Jekyll. So I'm going quite fast here. We're going to do a lot of demo on this, so don't worry. We're going to build out an entire site quite quickly. So GitHub Pages do all this for you. They have, when you create a Git repository and push it up to GitHub, if you've set some settings in the Pages area, so this is in the settings, and we'll have a look at that in a second, it will take that every time you publish, it will take whatever's in that that particular folder that you're pointing to in the pages. It could be a doc folder, or it could just be the root of the file system. It will take all the MD files and it will build out an entire site from that. So it's very easy to set this up. And all we need to do is just click on that settings in the GitHub repository and then select the Pages tab to get all the settings. So we'll have a look at that too. So front matter variables, so them things that we had at the very beginning of our page, they're kind of key value pairs. So the key is title in this case. And what will happen is we'll have a page, and that page can have, I think they call this mustache because it looks like little mustaches, the tildes. That's kind of a variable name. So if we have the word title in our page and we have a markdown front matter with the same thing, then it'll essentially just replace that with whatever the key is. So if we've got the key there as AR, wherever it sees the word title, it'll replace that with AR. So nice and simple. Okay, if you like what I do and you want to see more of this, you can help me out by liking this video, commenting if you're going to help me build out this robotics periodic table of robotics, and you can hit that subscribe button as well to get notified. Most people don't subscribe. I can see in the statistics that most people watch this and don't subscribe, so you're missing out if you don't subscribe. Okay, so Jekyll, this is going to generate our web pages from those very simple Markdown pages, and if we have data files like Yaml files, we can use that in our Jekyll environment as well. So Jekyll is free software tool for building static websites from a collection of Markdown files. GitHub uses Jekyll to generate pages and publishes them every single time you check in code. And Jekyll is actually written in Ruby. We don't actually have to worry about that. We can very quickly install it using Docker as well. So I've got a Docker instance installed on my machine. I can very quickly, and I'll show you the code how to do that as well, how we can bring up a brand new instance of Jekyll and have it build our pages out. And it can do it really cleverly. You can be typing code and it'll be generating the page in real time, like a live refresh. So you can also skip the Jekyll and publish directly to GitHub Pages. However, it's a bit harder to troubleshoot if things don't work the way you expect. And it can take about 30 seconds from committing the file for it to actually generate the page, because it kind of gets in a queue. I mean, it's free after all. And then we talked at the very beginning there about Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is a cascading style sheet framework for building web pages, and it's a set of styles and layout classes for CSS. So it's very easy to do things like create columns or rows, or if you want to stylize text in a particular way or work with tables. It's very good for doing all these kind of things. Things like navigation bars, we'll build out one of those as well today. Makes a very professional looking web page very quickly and very easily. Okay, so here is an example. I showed you a small version of this before. This is kind of what I'm aiming for. So I want to have a nice big sort of card at the front of the page with a bit like a periodic table. So instead of like hydrogen, you've got A for Arduino or AR. We have the title underneath that. Then we've got a larger version of that same title there. We've got whoever created this page, because you'll be going to helping me create these pages by submitting to a form I've created. I'll show that in a second. And then we've got the date when you've created the page, and then all the text that's going to be in there too. So on this one it says an Arduino is an 8-bit microcontroller that people use to get started in robotics, blah blah blah. So the title is a piece of front matter that will be putting into our Markdown page. We've got the author, that's going to be another piece of Markdown front matter. Same with the date, same with the page content, and the two-letter code. Well, the page content is going to be underneath the front matter. So how can you help me do this? So I was thinking about creating this all by myself, and then I thought this might never end if I do this. Why not help get the community involved in this? So you can help me build this by submitting your own entries, either by forking the code from GitHub, and if you don't know how to do that, don't worry, you can simply just use this form instead. So there is a link to this in the YouTube description. I updated it just before the show started. You can either scribble it down from the screen, or if you're watching live, you can get the link from the chat window as well. So a couple of different ways to help me out. Okay, let's go to the demo. I do go live every single Sunday at 7 PM Greenwich Mean Time. Next Sunday will be a little bit unusual. I'm on holiday next week, but I have got a show lined up. We're going to be doing the James Bruton interview, which I pre-recorded, so that'll go live next Sunday. Okay, so if you want to follow me on social media, you can head over to smarsfan.com/about/link_in_bio. So one of the things I'm going to do when I get my new custard pie, which is The prototype is just on the desk over here. These are Raspberry Pi 02s, and they're in a 3D printed case, and I've screwed them together. They're going to be in I'm going to build this out over time, and essentially they're going to be in kind of like a little frame. The wiring will be able to go through these little tunnels, so it's a bit like a Cray 1 supercomputer from back in the 70s. So where the power comes in there, it's got like a little tunnel that it can go through. So it'd be pretty cool when all that works. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing there is building a new website that's called kevsrobots.com. So I've got the domain name. I'm just learning, and I was learning this weekend how to do Let's Encrypt self-certificates, so you can build and host your own websites. So I'll do a video on that too, because that's quite difficult to do when you've not done it before. And it means we can have a smaller URL for things like link in bio. If you want to support the show as well, you can head over to buymeacoffee.com/KevinMcAleer. Thank you to people who've done that last week. Had a couple of coffees bought for me there, and that can help pay for things like the software I use to go live, and all the other bits and pieces, the equipment and the parts and so on. So you can either do that, or you can click on the YouTube membership. Next to the subscribe button, there's a little join button. I think it's only about $3 a month, something like that. Okay, demo time, my favorite time. Right, let me just get let's get ourselves sorted over here. So I'm just going to load up Visual Studio. Hopefully it won't make me glitch out while it loads that up. And then we'll create a brand new project from scratch, and we'll be able to go through every single step. So I've got my show notes here, just while that's loading up, of all the things I need to go through and talk you through one at a time. Okay, so that's just loading up now. And let's have a look and see. So I'm using Visual Studio, so I'm just waiting for that to initialize all its different windows and everything. Right, let's do that, and let's create a brand new window. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open up, so I'm on a Mac here, just waiting for that to finish what it's doing. Literally, I can see the CPU is like maxing out at the moment because of all the different plugins and everything. So I'm just waiting for that to settle down a second. Right, so what I'll do, just while that is loading up, I'm going to open up the place where I store all my websites, and I'll show you the screen in a second. I just want to get to the right place first. Okay, right, let's go for icons. Okay, so if I go to there, right, you can just about see this. So I've got a folder over here. This is a web folder where I keep all my websites. So I'm going to create a brand new folder in here. Oops, if I can remember how to do that. So new folder. Let's call this one Livestream. Oops. I can type. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up Visual Studio here. Let me just get my screen organized a bit better. Right. And I'm going to open up that folder that we've just created. So I'm going to click on Open. Let's see if I can do it quicker from there. Open folder. Okay, and I'm going to navigate to that web folder that we were just in, and then the live stream, folder that we just created. Okay, I'm going to open that up. So we should now start with a completely blank project. Let's just make sure that's done that. Okay. Come on, Visual Studio. Right, I'm just going to quit Keynote for a second just to give my machine a bit more working. There we go. Right, that seems to have done the trick. Okay, so I've got this live stream folder. There's nothing in it at all at the moment, so I'm just going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this like README, just so we've got something in the folder structure for it to work with. So let's just call this readme.md as a markdown file. And we'll just call this the live stream website, like so. I think it'll catch up in a second. It's just been a bit laggy. There we go. Right, so if I just save that, And if I now go to the area on the screen there, we can zoom in a little bit actually, just so you can see what's going on. There we go. Let's just zoom in a bit. There we go, that's better. And let's give ourselves a little bit more room to breathe. Okay, so I'm going to click on the source code control, and we haven't initialized this yet as a repository, a Git repository. So I'm just going to click initialize repository, and that will basically just do a Git init, and it will just create all the little things in the background. There'll be like a .git file folder that's created that can help us track all the different things that we're doing. So it immediately knows that there is a new change to the contents. There's a README, and it's not been tracked yet. We've not added that to our repository. So you can see it started out as blank, and we've added to that the word Livestream website. So we can just close that out, and I'm just going to do a commit message in here. So I'm just going to say initial commit. Okay, and then publish branch. So I'm going to publish this to GitHub, and I'm going to publish on a public one so that we can see what's going on. And that's going to now push that up to the cloud, and we can go over to GitHub and have a look at that. So if I just open up a new Safari window, and I'll show you the contents of that. If I just go to GitHub slash Kevin McAleer, and share my screen. Okay, so here's my repositories. I've got quite a few repositories. I seem to create one every single day. So we've got that live stream created 24 seconds ago, and we've got our README text file there as well. So there we go, Livestream website. So we've got some other things in here. We've got insights, we've got security, and so on. Now I'm actually not signed into this site at the moment, so let me just sign in as me. And that means we can edit that file and look at the settings. There we go. So if I click on settings now, we can see that there's actually this pages area here. And we can say that the source of the GitHub pages is going to be the main branch, and it's in the root folder. We could specify additional folders if we wanted there, but I'm just going to click save there. And it now says your site is ready to be published at kevinmcaleer.github.io/livestream, which is the name of the repository. So it'll not be ready yet. It'll take about 40 seconds for that to build out. So while it's doing that, let's go back over to our working area, and we're going to create some extra things. So let's create a new file and call it index.md. This is going to be our sort of welcome page for our website. So let's say welcome to the Livestream page. Oops. Page. And click a link to do something. So we're just going to add to this a little bit of Markdown. So I was talking before about how quickly you can build out lists. So if we just do a dash, we can say, I don't know, get groceries, wash car, or whatever. And if we click that little button there, Visual Studio has actually a built-in Markdown renderer. So we'll be able to see on here. Let's create a little bit of an extra thing there. Let's type the word welcome, and then we're going to put in front of that the little hash thing, and you can see that gives it that heading 1 style. And look, those little dashes turn into bullet points as well. And we can make other things like if we wanted to add a link to smarsfan.com, for example, we can just put some little brackets around that, and then some round brackets, and then the actual website address, smarsfan.com. And now we've got a clickable link there that will open up smarsfan.com in a browser. So we can see that that actually works there. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio. So we can close that out, but that's a quick way of seeing what our page looks like. So I'm just going to save that index.md there. I'm going to go back to our source code. I'm just going to type a message, added index. Really helpful. I'm going to click the little arrow button, and we're going to say sync the changes. So it's going to push those changes up to, you can see down here, it synchronizes the changes. It's going to push them up to GitHub. If we go back over to GitHub, so if we go to, Let's just give that a refresh and see if that page is actually built out yet. There we go. So that's our Livestream page that we created first of all. So we can see we've got a link there and we've got the word Livestream website, and it's added some style to that already because GitHub has its own set of themes that it can use to build out pages. So it looks pretty rubbish at the moment, and we can do a lot better than that. So let's just close that out. And in a moment or two, once it's taken those other changes that we've pushed up, this page will build out and add to that as well. So there we go. So it's now refreshed its page. It's run Jekyll in the background. It's now pulled through our heading 1 style. Welcome to the Livestream page, and we've got that link to SmarsFan as well on our page. So this is a live web page. You could go and visit this now if you wanted. It's kevinmcaleer.github.io/livestream, and we can build this page out. So that's how very quickly we can do that using GitHub Pages, but we want to do a lot more than that. We want to make this site really our own because the styles that they provide are not very good at all. So what we're going to do next, let me just have a look, make sure I'm on track there. So done that. So one of the things we can do, we might not be happy with the fact that this has got this kevinmcaleer.github.io/livestream. We might want our own domain name there instead, so we could use a service like GoDaddy or one of the other million domain name providers to provide us with a custom domain name. So I'm just going to load up, where have I put the GitHub repository? Let me just get that open. McAleer/livestream. Okay, so if I go back to the settings and I click on the pages again and we scroll down a bit, let's have a look what's going on here. We can actually set a custom domain. So if we owned a domain such as like kevsrobots.com, we could save that in there. We would need to have there's a button there that says learn more. There's a few extra steps you can do there, but it will create like a full HTTPS secure site for you. You can do other things like decide if you want different themes and so on, but I'm just sticking with I'm actually going to not use the themes at all in a minute. So that's what we can do there. We can change the themes of that and so on. We can have a custom domain name. Okay, so let's create a few more pages on here. Let's go back to our main area. Let's create another file. This one is going to be an about us page. So I don't know, about us.md, and we can see on here this is all about us. Okay, so that's that. What else? We want a links page, links to MD, so we could have smarsfan.com. Again, we can put that in the little squiggly brackets. Now, if we want to put the same thing twice, if we wanted to have SmarsFan and the actual address is SmarsFan, so if I just click on the little preview thing there, you can actually just put the thing once in some triangular brackets and it will render that out. Visual Studio is not rendering it properly there, but well, actually, if I put HTTPS like that, maybe it will. There we go. So that's a way of typing out a web address and have it displayed as a web address, but also be a link. So we could have a page and we'll just call it links, like so. Let's save that one. So on our about us, we didn't have a title, so let's just add a title to that as well. And then in a minute, we're going to start building this out using Jekyll. About us. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our first Jekyll data file. So let's create a new folder. We're going to call this folder _data. That's the convention for Jekyll. And then in there, we're going to create a file that's called nav.yaml. And this is going to be our navigation bar. So all we need to do on this is type -name:. So this is going to be the name of the link. So let's have home as our first link, then a couple of spaces, and then link. And then the actual link is going to be just a /. The next one is going to be our name, and then about us. So this is the text that gets displayed on the link. And then the actual page itself is just going to be about us. Then next we're going to have, we're going to have the links. So name, and then this is going to be links, and then the link to links is link links, like so. Okay, so that's going to be our YAML file, and if we ever want to build out any more navigation elements to that, we can do that. So for example, we could have another one on there, which is I don't know, Discord, and we could have a link, like an ugly link to our Discord sign up page, which is action.smarsfan.com/join Discord, like so. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to close that there. So that's what our YAML file looks like. Now we need something that's going to actually use that YAML file to create our navigation bar. So let's start building that out. So what we'll do next, we're going to create another folder. So let's just make sure we're in the root there. This one is going to be called includes. And again, we've got the underscore. So when we're dealing with Jekyll, Jekyll will ignore any folders that have an underscore in front of them. It won't publish them, but it will use them. So includes is a special folder where we can put all kind of helper HTML that we can build out, a bit like Lego blocks of our page, and use these lots of different times. So I'm going to have one that's called nav.html. And nav.html is going to use some Jekyll. I think this is like a Ruby. It looks a bit like Python. It's kind of its own language, really. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to use these little squiggly brackets and 2 percentage signs. And then in the front of that, I'm going to say assign nav equals site.data.nav. And that will tell Jekyll to look in the data folder for a file that's called nav. It knows it's a YAML file, so we don't have to put nav.yaml. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to then use a for loop. So again, we have to use these little tags that tell Jekyll that this is something it needs to execute rather than just render. So this says for item in nav, so for each navigation element in nav, and then after we've done that, I always do it at the same time, just so we close the loop, we have an end for. So that's something that's kind of unique to this language. And then what we can then do in there is we can say, let's have this is a bit of HTML, an anchor tag, and an anchor tag has a hypertext reference, and that's going to be squiggly brackets, which means use that front matter or that YAML key value pairs. So the thing that we want to do in here is have item.link. Item.link means it will go into this file, and for everything that's called name or link, it will pull out as an item.name, item.link, and so on. So let's go back to our navigation thing. So item.link, item is our dictionary, navigation is from our site data file, the nav.yaml. And then what we need to do in between the two tags is have another 2 of these mustache squiggly brackets, and in between that we can have item.name. Okay, let's save that, go to our index, and then what we'll do at the very top is we'll put this as our navigation bar. So we're going to have squiggly brackets with the percentage signs, which means include something. So I'm going to say include nav.html. Okay, I'm going to save that out. Now, rather than waiting for this to publish up to GitHub Pages, that will take forever to do. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up a Docker instance of Jekyll. So let's do this. So I've actually not got Docker running at the moment, so I'm just going to quickly just get Docker running. So if I just type Docker and spin that up, right. So Docker is now loading on my machine. You can't see it, but I've got a little Docker icon and all the little container things are just starting up. Hey, Laurie. And once it's started up, we can then break out a new terminal and start up our Jekyll instance. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I've already got a Jekyll, I think I called it show. Let me just open this up. So what I want to see in there is the actual configuration file. Let me see if I can pull that out. I'll tell you what, I'll just go to my screen for a second because I just need to grab it from another place. So just bear with me while I do this. So I'm just going to open up another thing, which was the show one. So I created, when I was doing my prep for the show, I had to basically just go through each step one at a time and test out that they work. So I've actually got a Docker Compose file that has all the right settings in it to spin up a Docker instance. So I just want to grab that and then paste it in there so you can see what that's all about. Okay, so let me just grab this and cut and paste, and then we can put that into our file. So that's what I'm doing over here. I'm just waiting for this file to open up. So this is the previous version that I worked on just before the show, and that's it. We just need to copy that. I'll talk you through what each of these bits of text actually means once it's woken up. There we go. Let's copy that, and then let's go back to our other folder, which is the Livestream one. Okay, I'm just going to paste that into a new file. The file has a very specific name, so it has to be docker-compose.yml for YAML. It's another YAML file, and that's going to be we can just have that in the root of our code folder. That's not a problem. So let's just create that. Let's call it docker-compose.yaml. So docker-compose.yaml, and try that again, docker-compose, there we go. And Visual Studio even recognizes this as a Docker file. It's got a little Docker picture there. Right, so I'm going to paste that in. Hopefully it's going to remember all that. Right. Let me just delete that. It's been really sluggish because I'm running a few things at the same time. I think it's really killing it. So just bear with me a second while it catches up there. Right. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back to that. It's just a bit quicker if I do it off screen. So I'm just going to literally drag that file from one place to another. So if I just open up two folders, my show folder and the Livestream one, I can copy the code between the two. So let me just find that, and then we can carry on. So it's a show, there it is, and Docker Compose. Let's just copy that into there. Yes, replace. Okay, cooking with gas. Right. Okay, so what we're doing on here then, I'm just going to close out some windows so I can see what I'm doing. And we're going to close that console that's just opened up there. So this is a Docker Compose file, so it's a YAML file. So the first thing we have to have is version. This just tells the Docker Compose engine what version of the file we're using. So version 1's fine for this. We then got this thing, services, and you can actually have many different Docker containers running in one Docker Compose file. We're just going to have one, and it's going to be our Jekyll serve one. So the image is Jekyll/Jekyll:4.0. So that's the version of Jekyll that we're going to grab from the Docker Hub. It's going to download that, and it's going to run that on our machine. I'm also going to create a volume. A volume is like a virtual hard drive that we can insert into this Docker container. So what I'm saying here is I want the current working folder, that's what dot means, and the colon says map that to inside the container serve/Jekyll, and that's where it will serve its pages from. And then the next section, ports, that means map port 4000 to 4000, so from inside the container to outside, and similar with this 35729, that's how it does this live refresh. And then we've got this command here. This is what it's essentially going to run on the command line within the container. Jekyll serve -- watch, which means watch for any changes. And then live reload means, and then make those changes live on the page as we edit it. So I'm going to simply take that. If I go down to terminal, open up a new terminal, which is what all this is about down here. I'm just going to move this screen about a bit so we've got a bit more real estate. And I'm simply going to do Docker Compose up. And that will bring up that Docker container. Now it's actually already running on here. That's great. So what I'll do, if I do Docker down, let's see if that will work. And then let's just do Docker back up again. So it's complaining that something's already running on that same thing. So what I'll just need to do is just go into my Docker dashboard and just delete that other instance or remove it. It's got the same name and the same ports. That's what it's complaining about. So if I just can off the show one, That should be fine. If we try that again now, port is already allocated. Let's just go back to that Docker dashboard. There must be another Jekyll instance on there. Let me have a quick look. Even if they're not being used, it will complain. So I've got some there that are not being used. So let's just get rid of them. Get rid of them. And it gives them weird names. I've not created these names. It's just kind of a random name generating thing. So each container has a unique name. Right, I think that is all good. I'm going to stop that Twitcher.py as well, because I think that might be running on a similar thing. Right, let's now try up again. Oh, man alive, so what's it complaining about? So, that port is already allocated. So let's go and make sure. So that we've deleted the running things, but I think we have to delete these as well, which is the actual containers. So let me see which one. That one's in use. That's weird. Let's just clean up. Okay. Let's just remove the ones we're not using, or dangling ones as it calls them. Dangling. There's nothing else dangling, so it's just that one there, isn't it? Jekyll in use. So let's remove that one. It says we can't remove it. So what do I need to do on there? Well, that's a pain. I thought that was going to be nice and simple. Let me just try one more time. So Docker image ls. So I actually find there's a software called Portena. It's much easier to use. So let's go to Portena. Portena is like a Docker container manager. So I've got that installed, and it's basically just whatever my local machine is, -9443. And is Portena not running? We'll get to the code in a second. I just need to do this. So Portena is running. Let's launch that browser. Docker is having a bit of a moment, I think. That's a bit weird. Okay, well, what we can do, I'm trying to think of the best way forward for this, because I've got Docker running on some other machines that we could perhaps run that on. I'm just really frustrated that that's not actually working there. So Jekyll. So I have Jekyll installed anyway. So we can perhaps just get it to do the build thing that we want it to do. Jekyll, it can be a funny beast with it being Ruby based. It has a whole lot of extensions, and all the different versions of things need to be sort of in sync. This is why I prefer to use the Docker version of this. So let me just have one last try at getting that to work on there, and we'll just ditch that and then move to the next thing. So let me just see what we've got running. So I have got Docker running there. So let's try running that. So, okay, let's stop that. Let's delete that. What stacks? Ah, there we go. That was the one that was causing the problem. There's another instance of Jekyll running. I just hadn't noticed it was called that. So let's just kill that. And then our Livestream one should now actually work. Right, that does appear to be working now. Perfect. So if I go to a browser, and I go to 0.05000, I think it is. Let's just go back to here. Yes, so this is actually running Jekyll at the moment. And what it hasn't done, it hasn't actually rendered a page for us. That index.md hasn't rendered properly yet. So that's a good sign. That means things are actually working and it's building out the site. So what we can see, that folder has just appeared, _site, and it's created web pages for all the different pages that are on here. Now currently it doesn't know how to build them because it hasn't got a template for each of them. So we're going to quickly create a template. So we create another folder. We'll call this _, and then layout. And then in layout, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this one default.html. And then we're going to create a skeleton HTML in one command. So we simply just do an exclamation mark, and it knows that this is emit. Emit is like a shortcut for building out things. So if I do exclamation mark, it will build out an entire web page framework. So currently the page name that appears at the top of the browser is going to be the word document. Now we can actually change that using our squiggly brackets to be the page.title. So whatever the page title is from the front matter will appear at the top of the browser. And then I'm simply going to put in here content as well. So what we can now do is go back to each of our pages, like our index 1, and we can have some front matter. So three dashes, and what we're going to put inside those 3 dashes now is layout. And the layout is going to be the default layout that we've just created. So default. And we can also give it a title such as, so this is the index, so this is home. And we can copy that, put that into our links one as well. So let's just do that there. We're going to change that title to be links. And let's also change our about us as well. And let's just change that to links. Okay. If I look in that site, let's see, yeah, it's actually started to build out proper web pages now. So if we go back to our browser and we just refresh that browser, we've now got a web page. So this is built out of all those different things that we've put together. Now it's looking pretty rubbish at the moment. We've got Times New Roman fonts. We've got it looks horrible. We've got all the links sort of going vertically instead of horizontally. So what we need to now use is Bootstrap. So we talked about Bootstrap at the beginning of the show. So we go to get Bootstrap. Bootstrap is free. So all we need to do is go to the line that's down here. That is this one here. So CSS only, we just copy that. It's going to be that line of text there. And we simply need to put that in between the head tags in our web page. So if we go back to our web page, to our default layout, in this tags where it says head, we can do it after the title there. We just paste that in like so. And if we go back to our page over here, give that a bit of a refresh. Let's see what's going on, if that's all good. Now, if you ever want to inspect a page on a Mac, I think it's Control, Option and I, and that will open up like the inspector, and you can actually see what's going on. So I can look in the head and see that there isn't actually anything in there at the moment that we can edit. So it hasn't rendered out that page properly. So there must be an issue there. Let's go and have a look in our Docker, and it says there default request in about us does not exist. Default. So let me just have a look and see what the issue is there. So I'm going to change that. Instead of being layout, it's layouts with an S at the end. Do that, and then we go back to our page. Give that a bit of a refresh. See, that looks different now. We can close the inspector. So you can notice now that's not Times New Roman now. That's a different font. But everything still looks ugly and not correct. So we need to work on our page a little bit more. So in our includes, we've got this nav.html. And at the moment, it's just got some commands to build out the page. So what we can do on here, we can wrap this whole thing. If I do .nav and then press tab, this is another emit abbreviation, and it's going to build a class called nav. Actually, we don't want a class called nav, we just want nav itself, which is a tab. Nav is a tag all of its own. So if we just take that last part of the tag, put that at the very end, so it's kind of wrapped between these two nav tags, and then we can then do an unstructured list, a UL. We're going to copy that, paste that after the end for, and then within the for loop here, we're going to have a list item tag for each item. So we just need to do this once. So let's paste that there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add some classes to these things. So that UL, we're going to say, I think this is the right place to do it, class equals navbar nav. I think that's the right one. And then for list item, we have a class of nav-item. And then within the link, the anchor tag, we have a class of nav link. Okay, let's go back to our browser and see what's going on. Yes, it's now gone across the page because it now understands that that is a navigation bar. Doesn't quite look right to me, that, so I think what I might do is just move that class into the nav bar and then go back to the page. No, that's not right. Let's just undo that. So nav dash bar, I think it might be. Let's try that. There we go. That's perfect. So we've now got a nav bar. So we've got home, about us, links, and discords. Let's try clicking on that. Yep, there's the about us page. There's the links page. And there's our Discord link. If we click on that, it actually does go to our join up Discord thing. If we click on home, it'll send us home. Now at the moment, everything's sort of squished up to the top left of the page. So what we need to do is put that inside a container. So if we go back to our page layout, where we've got the content thing, and what we're going to do is we're going to wrap that inside another div, another divider. So if we just do .container and then tab, we can then cut that other piece off, stick that on there. And if we go to our page now and have a look, give that a bit of a refresh. Still over there, so what's wrong with that? Container content. And we can also do things like use columns. So let's create a row. So let's do .row. And we're going to create like a little row and column kind of thing going on. So let's do, after the container, we're then going to have a column. So .col for column. Let's actually have 3 columns. And then let's cut this bit out and put this in the middle column. So just in there. And these columns are going to be, there's 12 columns when you're using this Bootstrap thing. So if you say each of the side ones is 2 wide, the middle one is then, do your maths, that's going to be 8. So they add up to 12 in total. And we can put a little thing there just to sort of say left column, just to show that this is working, and right column. We go back over to our page. So let's have a look. So because that hasn't rendered, there must be an error. Let's have a quick look there. No, it says everything's good. They've got left column and right column. The problem is our navigation bar is kind of in between that. We might want that, we might not. I don't want that in this case, so I'm just going to change around the order. So at the moment, inside the page index, we have that navigation include. So if we go to, sorry, in the index.md, we have that include navigation. Now really that should be on every single page, so I'm going to cut that from there. I'm going to go back to our default layout, and before we get to these rows and things, I'm going to put that there. So every single page will now have the navigation in the correct place. I'll just wait for that to catch up to make sure that's rendering. Yep, that's done okay. So there we go. So if I go to about, links, home, it's now loading all the correct pages up, and we can see those things are now in a column. Now we might want to add a bit of color difference because we can't really see what's going on. So if I go back to that navigation include, and we can actually say that this is background dark. So if we go to where we've got this nav thing, if we do bg-dark, it might be too dark. That looks a bit too dark. So instead let's go for bg light. And you can see how quickly it's updating things now. Okay, so what we can now do then is build out things a little bit more. So what I want to get to with our periodic table for robotics is have a whole bunch of pages with the front matter on, and then Jekyll will just publish the page with very little effort from us. So let's create an example page from that. But before we do that, we'll probably just need to have another layout style, which is called page. So page.html. And in our page.html, we're going to have some front matter that says layout is based on default. So we don't have to include anything else on there. We're then going to say we want to include the page.title. And I'm going to have that in, let's have a think how this will work. Page.title and page.author. And let's have page date as well on there. Page date. And let's now include a horizontal line after that. So HR, like so. Okay, and we'll have the page title as a heading 1 style. So H1, let's just wrap that in there. And then for our title, let's have that as a H5 style, like so. Now let's create a page. Let's try out that ar.md. So this is going to be our Arduino page. So we will have the layout type as page. Oops, page. The title is Arduino. The 2-letter code we'll have as AR. The author is going to be me. The date is going to be, and you have to do it in kind of reverse order, so 2022-02-06. Okay, and then we can have something like get started in robotics with the Arduino. So that's going to be like where our the Arduino blah blah blah. Okay. So if we now go to our navigation data, let's just add a link into that first one just so that we can quickly find it. So if we do name AR, and then link is going to be AR, like so. So let's go back to over here. We can now see we've got a link to that. Oh, it says AR isn't found. What have I done wrong there? Let's have a quick look. Maybe I just hadn't given it enough time to render it. No, it hasn't found it. So what's wrong with that? Is it in the wrong place? Let me find, yes, it's in the layouts folder. Let me just move that down there. It was accidentally in the wrong place. So if I just drag that, maybe I just need to cut that and paste that down there. And it'll say, are you sure you want to move it? No, it really hasn't done that. Let me just drag that down there. That's it. Okay. We now go back to there. There we go. So our Arduino page is beginning to come together. So we've got the title, we've got the author, and we have the date. And we've got the left and the right column, and we've got all our other bits and pieces working. But we haven't got our 2-letter code. So I think what we wanted to go for in here, and this is we'll do all this sort of tweaking in our layout. So the 2-letter code, let's have that as the H1 style, and we called it code, so it's simply going to be page.code, like so. And then maybe we'll make our author style 2, and we can tweak around with the positioning and stuff like that, but you get the idea. So once it's updated, that just takes it a couple of seconds to render it. There we go, AR, and then Arduino, and then our date. We can't see any of the content down there, and that's because in our page layout I didn't include that content bit, so I just need to come down here and say that that's there. Okay, so that will then magically appear in a second once this is finished rendering. There we go, get started with robotics with Arduino blah blah blah. So it's looking pretty bland, the page. That's because we haven't added any color or any kind of graphics or anything like that to it. But if you look back to see what we've actually just created there, we've created an entire web page that will automatically generate using a Jekyll Docker instance, and it's very easy to maintain. So these AR things, you know, we've got, if we wanted to create another one for, I don't know, the Raspberry Pi Pico, let's just copy that, we'll call it, let's just rename it, I don't know, PI for Pi. We could say that this is the Raspberry Pi Pico, and the thing is Pi, and then Raspberry Pis are awesome, like so. And we could quickly add that as well if we wanted to here. we wouldn't have them in the top navigation because we want to have them as cards on an index page. So we can figure out how to do that separately. We could have a different data file for just the periodic ones, and we could basically go through that and build out a card for each of them. We probably won't get enough time to do that today, but you get the idea there. So if I just do that as pi, wait for that to finish rendering the page, which it has. So we've got pi there, Arduino, so you can see we can very quickly build out some pages with actually not too much difficulty. And because they're very simple, that's very simple for us to maintain. We've just got some front matter, and we can add as many of these as we like. We can add a bunch of tags. That might be something we have, or we might want to group them together, a bit like on the periodic table where you've got all your metals and alkalis and all that kind of stuff. Is that the right word? Alkalis? And then all the sort of nuclear ones at the bottom. We could do that by using like a tag thing as well. So we could have like this is like I don't know, electronics or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm going for there. So what I want your help with is to suggest what those elements should be on the periodic table of robotics. So I guess we want around 100 to 120 different elements to put on there. All the obvious ones I think we should put on there, like the Arduino, all the boards basically, the ESP32s, the microbits, that kind of thing, the Raspberry Pis, zeros and so on. All the languages, so C, we would probably want Python on there, MicroPython, CircuitPython, and what else? Motors, sensors, rangefinders, laser rangefinders, LiDARs, batteries, motors, that kind of thing. So if you can suggest those, you can send them either by going to that link. Yes, actuators and sensors. So all the things basically. If you want to send them to me, I'll just bring up that that page again. Let me just load up Keynote, and I'll just put that link up again just so you've got that to hand. Just wait for it to do that. Okay, so where's the link? There we go. I just do that, and I just go over to there. So yeah, if you go to forms.gle, it's like a Google form, and then all those things there, N2, X, GM, JZ, SEE, HZ, FD, QU, 8. Or you could just go to GitHub and fork the code and then do a push request or merge request, whatever it's called, and I'll just get that and merge it in. But very simple to do. Either way, if we actually go to that form, let me just grab a link from the description. I just find the page that we've got here. You've just pasted it in the chat. I'm just going to open that up. So here we go. This is what it looks like. So just put your email address in there. I'm not going to use that for anything else. That's just so that we can see who it is who suggested that. And then what the two letters are going to be, what your what the title of the page is going to be, like Arduino, a description that you want to include in there, type as much as you like in there. That's going to be the sort of body of the text. The URL, if there is like a URL like raspberrypi.org. Your name, haven't I got there? Yeah, that's your full name there, and your author's email. I'm not sure why I got email twice there. Maybe I could just take that one out. Then if you've got any kind of cover image, if there's any kind of artwork you want to include in that, put a link there. I will have to check that it is like Creative Commons, or what I might do is just do a version of that. But if you upload an image, I can basically just take it from there. Cool. So yes, really looking forward to see what we can do building out our periodic table of robotics, and it gives my little Raspberry Pi cluster something to do. So these are the little modules I've been creating. This is a Raspberry Pi 02, so these are a little bit more powerful ones. Going to be running the 64-bit version of Raspberry Pi OS that's just come out, and once I've finished 3D printing all these pieces, we'll have enough to have a little C shape, and I've got a whole bunch of Raspberry Pis on the desk as well that we can work through. So a couple of other things just to update you on as well. So I've managed to, where have I put the rest of that thing? Maybe I've just thrown it away. My 3D printer had a bit of a fault where it basically just pile drive through the heated bed. So this is like a magnetic cover. So I'm just in the middle of replacing that on one of my, in fact I can probably show you if I go to that camera there. You can see there where that's got a bit of damage to it just there. Right in the middle, and this is me just trying to tear this off. It's like well and truly stuck on there. So that's one of the things I'm doing at the moment. I've basically got both printers printing out different parts. So this one on the left is printing out the yellow base plates, and then the one on the right is printing out the white frames for the Raspberry Pis to screw into. So that's what they look like. They've got like little lugs on them, and they work quite well. The screws go into them. If there's any headers on the front or the back, they go through there. And I've got a little piece there where I can put a little piece of triangle, looks like this, and that will basically just give it kind of like a roof and keep them all separated nicely. So that's one of the things I'm working on at the moment. I do have the Raspberry Pi clusters. I think it's just behind me. You can just see it flickering away there. So I'm currently working on that one, and there is another one which is just there as well. That's like the prototype one. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. Yes, and Richard says the Picade in the background as well. Yes, that was last Monday's 3-hour live stream. And the other thing I'm working on, so I do have one of these keypads. I bought this when this first came out. It's like a 16 LED keypad. And somebody said, could you make this so that it's a bit like a Stream Deck, one of these things that you can have for putting buttons on. And so you can basically you press a button on here and it does some kind of action on your computer. Now that requires it being a HID device, a human interface device. And CircuitPython, they have a HID Python library. So on here I've installed that, and I can get it. If I press these buttons, it will output text or various different keys. So what I can do, if I just grab this over here, I can make this become a cheap version of one of these X keys. So this is like a more professional version. You can actually customize the keys on this by sort of taking them off and putting different keycaps on and so on. But these cost quite a bit of money and with very, very good quality. That will last years. It's a bit like a Stream Deck, but it's just on and off colours. Whereas this can do all the colours, can do like 16 million colours. So I was thinking about, we can make it so that we can configure this using like a YAML file to say, key number 1, when it's on, it runs this thing. When it's off, it's this colour. So there's like an on and an off colour, because you might make it white and then go into red or something like that. And maybe some effects where it's like pulses. So that bit of code's quite simple to write, but the HID thing, I'd never come across that before, and it works really easily. So I'm going to do a video on how to make your own human interface device using one of these keypads. They're quite cheap, quite easy to come by. Pimoroni make these particular ones, the RGB keypad. So I'll be looking at doing that with CircuitPython. Cool. I think that is everything I was going to cover off. Well, other than the fact when I was saying about using that with CircuitPython, there is no YAML library for CircuitPython or for MicroPython. So I had to write my own YAML library to read in a YAML file, understand what it is, and then make it into a dictionary so we can actually use the contents in our MicroPython. So that was just an aside, just create something out of the blue like that. Cool. So let's have a quick look at what people have been talking about in the comments. And this is the section of the video where if you're watching this live, you can carry on. We'll have a bit of a Q&A. But if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, then this is the point of the video where I'll say goodbye and I shall see you next time.